Right, shall we start? Welcome to the Fire Authority meeting. Can I please have apologies for absence and any declarations of interest?
We have apologies from Councillor Bywater, Chair.
Thank you very much. And may I start with an announcement, please? I'd like to welcome those members of the press and public who are watching on the live stream and following on the YouTube page. The Fire Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting takes place? There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we'll all make our way out via the nearest available fire exit. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. It is with great sadness that last month, on the 27th of January, we learnt that Scottish firefighter Barry Martin died after spending a week critically ill in hospital with injuries sustained in a fire in a former department store building in Edinburgh. The service shared its deepest condolences with Scottish colleagues, and our thoughts remain with Barry's family and colleagues at this devastating time. Members, may I ask you to stand, please, and join with me in a minute's silence. Thank you. So for clarity, I'll just restate the question, whether any disclosable pecuniary interests are, whether you wish to make any disclosable pecuniary interests. I see no hands. Thank you. Let us look at the minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on the 3rd of November. We're asked to approve these minutes as an accurate record. If any member wants to raise a question on the accuracy, please would you raise your hand? I see no hands, therefore we'll take that as carried unanimously. Thank you very much. On that basis, we're happy to approve. I would like to extend a special welcome to Councillor Dugdale, who was appointed at Tuesday's full council meeting as a member of the Fire Authority. He replaces Councillor Atkins, and I would like to also thank Councillor Atkins for his time on the authority. Given that the appointment was only made on Tuesday, the appointments to committee item was not added to the agenda. So with the consent of the authority, please may I deal with this as an urgent item at the end of the meeting. Are members in agreement with this proposal? Yes? Thank you very much. So I will proceed to relay some items as Chair's announcements. So I hope that members who were able to visit the site at St John's this morning were impressed by the new facility. the operational crews started to respond from it on the 1st of February. We have an agenda item today on the project, which provides an overall update, but I understand from the Chief Fire Officer that there will be an official opening ceremony soon to mark this truly monumental achievement. It seems that the budget and future finances have been dominating subjects for many months, and today, members, we will be asking you to approve the budget for 23-24. Our lobbying of local MPs and other influential stakeholders on the key challenges facing the service seems to have had the desired impact. The final government financial statement received in December last year confirmed that we will receive sufficient funds to offset this year's deficit, and if the economic situation improves, we'll be in a good place to deal with any inflationary pressures we face the following year. This means that the authority will not now need to implement in full the business continuity plan, and officers can get back to focusing on improving the services they provide to our communities. That said, the officers do remain acutely aware of the need to progress our efficiency planning, as we won't necessarily have spare cash to invest in areas and need to improve our services further. Therefore, if things can be done more efficiently for less, then we still need to drive through those changes. And there is a degree of uncertainty in the future year's funding, with several factors in play, of which I'm sure you are aware. I would, however, like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the preparation of the financial business continuity plan, that it was a really tough piece of work for those involved. We do feel our publicly expressed concerns about funding have been listened to, however, and as such, I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed. The work will stand us in excellent footing moving forward. Officers will continue to review these plans each year in line with normal business continuity planning and update the authority as appropriate. I'm sure many of you will have seen the reports in the media highlighting the review of the London Fire Brigade and the conclusions following the year-long cultural investigation, and more recently, the nationally reported appalling behaviour and harassment suffered by women firefighters in Dorset and Wiltshire. The LFB report, the London report, is a shocking and extremely difficult report to read for anyone in the sector, and many I know struggle to comprehend that such extreme behaviour still exists in the modern day fire and rescue service. The review clearly shows that fire and rescue services are at different stages of their cultural journey. In Cambridgeshire, a lot of emphasis has been put on our values and one-team behaviours over the last couple of decades, and they underpin everything the service does, as it strives to be a place where everyone feels welcome for who they are and can be, and that they can be themselves at work. Many people comment on how different it feels here, and that is because our people are supportive, welcoming, and care about their community and each other. The feedback we receive from colleagues suggests this is the case, and this is also reflected in the feedback the HMI CFRS received. However, if anyone, I just want to make this really clear, if anyone doesn't think that's where we are, and that they are being subjected to bullying or offensive behaviour, or that they are witnessing negative behaviour towards others, then please come forward, make yourself known. As the chair of the authority, I assure you this matter will be dealt with, and you will have my support every step of the way. In December, we received notification of the dates for our inspection. We are again one of the first 2 fire and rescue services to be inspected, and this comes even earlier than we were anticipating. The process began in January with the document, a return self-assessment and staff survey. The inspection team are due to visit from the 3rd week of February, and indeed were presented to yesterday. This has meant that officers weren't given much time to prepare, but there's been so much to report on. They have a fantastic story to tell. The challenge has been to consolidate everything into a concise 1,500 word self-assessment based on improvements that they can demonstrate. There are some changes to the inspection scoring, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a bit more about this today, with the new category of adequate being added. As we were awarded good across the board in all but one of the 11 categories last time, our challenge will be to demonstrate we still belong in good. So although this is a rather daunting prospect to be inspected and it involves a lot of work, it has been an opportunity to demonstrate the really fantastic work that has been taking place. So the month of February is LGBTQIA+ History Month and provides a great opportunity for colleagues to learn and share their support for an underrepresented group. The issues relating to the World Cup being hosted in Qatar, the media coverage around pronouns, and the recent controversy around the gender recognition bill only confirm we still have much to learn. The theme of this year's LGBT+ History Month is Behind the Lens, which celebrates the contribution to cinema. And the service will be promoting various films and that have a strong LGBT theme running throughout. For example, the recent series, It's a Sin. There'll be many other opportunities for learning and sharing, and I was particularly delighted to hear that some of our employees from the LGBT+ community have expressed an interest in telling their own story. It's an important marker for us as an authority that people feel we provide a safe space for them to bring their whole selves to our workplace. Officers are also in the process of developing a bespoke CFRS Pride helmet for use at the various community functions we attend, and I look forward very much to seeing what is created there. Thank you. May we turn to the first substantive item then on the agenda, Sebastian.
Apologies for not clearing this with you beforehand, but I think there is an important addition to the chair's announcements. I was very privileged to be invited as Vice Chair of the County Council to attend the Cambridgeshire Apprenticeship Awards. Shall I leave it with you now, Chair?
I'm very happy for you to continue that. Thank you, Sebastian.
The Cambridgeshire Apprenticeship Awards 2023 held here in the Red Kite Room the day before yesterday. And I'm sure that members of the Fire Authority will join you, Chair, in congratulating Michael Burrell, who was Apprentice of the Year and from the Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. And I'm sure that that is a great credit both to him, to his employer, and to the service as a whole.
Thank you very much for reminding us of that. And yes, here, and many congratulations, please, to be recorded in the minutes. Thank you. May I now turn to the first item, substantive item on the agenda, the budget for 2023-24 and the Treasury Management Strategy. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Fire Authority. So the budget that's presented before you has well and truly been through the process this year, I would suggest. It started its journey in December when it went to the Policy and Resources Committee, and since then it's been through overview and scrutiny where there were no changes suggested, and then again on to the Policy and Resources Committee just last week, again with no changes suggested and an endorsement. So I wasn't going to go into too much detail today. The figures haven't changed. I mean, there's a couple of points just to raise. Some Fire Authority members may be aware that the Fire Brigades Union have suspended strike action for the time being because there was a pay offer of 7% and 5% put forward. Now, obviously, that's in excess of what was included within this budget from a pay perspective. What it does do is any and I look at Councillor Reynolds here because he asked a question last week in the Policy and Resources Committee saying, had we set any more money aside for any rainy day, which I responded, yes, we had. What this will do is take away any of that rainy day money. So there's money set aside in our supplies and services, but it does mean that actually all of a sudden anything that we were going to use to enhance and improve the service is really going to be taken up on paying the pay award. Now that in the short term isn't an issue because clearly we would hopefully look to catch up again in future years, but it does represent a problem if we do need to invest in the service because we will need to go back to the financial business continuity planning. Again, it's something we're doing anyway. So I think I just wanted to highlight that because it does change the context slightly in terms of the good news story that we were projecting. In terms of other elements, there is a treasury management statement attached to it. That clearly has that's how we fund often how we fund. So it's around borrowing and it's around investments. That needs to stay quite flexible in terms of approach, because at the moment, again, members will understand that the value of our money, even if we invest it, is actually going down because the rate on return is something like 4%, 5%, and actually rate of inflation is still above that. So we're getting diminishing returns in real terms. So at the moment, the way this has been constructed is we're going to use our cash instead of putting it on deposit. That may change, and I may come back to you and say I need to change it if things change in the economy as we move through this year. Other questions just before we started the meeting. Councillor Reynolds asked me how much our new Matro kit is, and it is in the containment in the budget book, and it costs us £27,000 per set. Okay, so it's gone up a little bit from the old sets, but that is battery operated as well. So this budget I present to you today will allow us to fund. We won't need to make any knee-jerk still, but we will need to be very, very frugal in terms of how we move forward in the next financial year. Chris.
Sorry. Yeah, just to add to the discussion, members will be aware there's a live negotiation been going on between the National Joint Council and the FBU National Executive. Myself and the chair were invited to the most recent consultation meeting. Certainly a view expressed by the chair of the National Fire Chiefs Council Finance Committee was of the view that the significant majority of fire and rescue services could not afford more than 5 and 4%. It did come as a bit of a surprise to us when 7 and 5 was offered. And as Matthew said, that contingency fund that we have in place to enable us to invest in what is a significantly growing county, bearing in mind that the latest census stats is telling us that Peterborough and Cambridge are amongst in the top 6 of increase in population in locations in the country. So we are serving an increasingly large population, but we are having to use any excess cash that we get to effectively maintain services. So there is no doubt moving forwards, if we want to do things to improve the service, we will have to think about where we take resources so that we can put them in other places, which is not an ideal place to be. But as Matthew said, hopefully in the coming years, and we'll certainly open up some conversations with the Home Office and Department for Levelling Up over the early part of this year about our settlement for next year and whether there is a possibility for us to look at the preset ceiling for next year. So I just thought I'd add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify? I may have missed this through your chair. Apologies to Matthew. I did. I'm talking about now about the potential for the pay award, whatever the outcome is. First of all, I'm not sure what a percentage is the effect on us, if you could remind me of that. But also, if I look at your report, and it's just to draw members' attention, I think it's page 20 of the actual report or page 15 of our papers. And it did refer to this as the adequacy of reserves. So I presume this investment, this money you're talking about, because it did say in here about using the 400k for what was the whole time recruitment reserve of 400k to be used to help fund the pay increase pressures experienced in, it does say 22-23, which of course was effectively this current year rather than any future years. And I'm just checking, is that what you're referring to as a reserve? And how much of that would be used up on a percentage basis if they go from 5%, say, or even if they were to accept, if the FPU were prepared to accept the 7%? And on that same point, on the table which follows on the next page, actually refers to operational firefighter reserve, which I presume is the same thing as you're talking about in the preamble as being the whole time recruitment reserve. Is that the same? Is that the same thing? Just the terminology changes from one page to another.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Maguire. So the operational firefighter reserve, that reserve is set aside to actually manage peaks and troughs in firefighters to make sure that we can maintain the right level of establishment. So when we lose a firefighter, sometimes we'll need to train them in advance, or we go above establishment. We don't budget for that above establishment as it stands at the moment. So we budget for a fixed figure. So that's what that reserve is, just to smooth out those peaks and troughs. The finance business continuity reserve, which is the £1 million, is to pay for the pay award. Okay, so that will be gone, almost certainly. I mean, it would depend on where we end up at the end of the current financial year, but it will be gone. And then in terms of the next financial year, because we budgeted 5 and 4, the knock-on impact for 23-24 is £460,000. That's the gap effectively that we have to fill. And what we're saying is I have enough within, if you like, the general contingency around supplies and services, which is the point that Councillor Reynolds made at the Policy and Resources Committee, to fund it for that year to effectively catch up. But it doesn't leave us with any flexibility anywhere else in the budget.
So through you, Chairman, if I could just clarification. So the £1 million will cover what, the 5%, up to the 5%, but not up anything above that.
It will. So the 1 million is for this financial year, so it will cover up to the 7%.
Up to the 7%.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the clarification.
Yeah, but in addition, not just the 7%, it's also support pay as well. So it will cover all of that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, there's been so many movements. It's difficult to keep tracks, I think, but the settlement put us into a very different position. And we aren't clear, obviously, what the final pay position is going to be, because it is still being discussed. I've got Councillor Reynolds next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On a similar vein, going back to the Policy Committee, 2 months ago, as we said, we're in a totally different place. So we were pleased to support the balanced budget as it was presented. And we took into account that it was almost a 1 year only because of the changes central government made in the precept allowance. One of the things we highlighted at the Policy Committee was our concern over the allowance for inflation. And we were given a degree of assurance that there is some rainy day money, for want of a better description. Now, through nobody's fault, we're in a situation where the pay looks like it's going to come through to eat most of our rainy day money. And I've still got a horrible feeling that inflation's going to bite us later on in the year. So have we got a plan C? That would be one question. You may not be able to answer that off the top of your head, but it's a concern that we have. And the other thing is, we agreed to go to public consultation on the £4.99. Was there any feedback from that consultation? Thank you.
So in terms of the plans, so the plan C, D, E, or whatever, whichever letter we end up at, Councillor Reynolds, is our financial business continuity planning. So all of that work we've done over the last year will effectively be dusting that down and saying, okay, if we really had to, if the worst case, clearly I have a level of general reserve in the short term that we could do if it was a small amount. But yes, we'd be looking at our financial business continuity plans. That would be our plan B, C, D, and we'd bring it back to you first. In terms of the consultation, if you're happy, Chair, what we did this year, we actually just did news releases, and we went to the public and asked effectively through media for comments, rather than going through a formal questionnaire that we've done in the past and got very little feedback. And we got very little feedback again, which I think is probably a positive. Certainly, I did a couple of interviews, and they were all very, very positively spun. Interestingly, so. But yeah, beyond that, we've got very little feedback.
Are there any other questions or comments to make about the budget? Councillor Kindersley.
There being none, I would, in that case, propose that we approve the budget book attached at Appendix 1, including the recommendations on page 17, and approve the Treasury Management Strategy Statement at Appendix 2. I don't know if I have a seconder for that.
Thank you. Seconded. Very well. Those in favour? Is that unanimous? I believe it is. Thank you very much. Right, let us move to the, sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought it was unanimous. Is there any vote against? Any abstentions? No, I think it was unanimous. Thank you. The next item is the draft pay policy statement. And can I ask Matthew to introduce the report, please?
So I'm sure members will be aware, every year we have to bring a pay policy statement, particularly from a transparency perspective, that sets out certain aspects of our pay structure and other payments that may be offered across the authority. We also have to do comparators year on year in terms of those highest paid to those lowest paid. And in essence, this is unfortunately, this has been written obviously before any pay awards as well, because we're still in negotiation. So some of it will have to catch up on an annual basis, because we wait until this meeting, because ordinarily these things would have been agreed, but clearly they haven't as yet. So it's a factual document. It's there from to be as transparent as we can be. There's a couple of points around highest paid and lowest paid ratio, but beyond that, there's not really any change to last year's document. It needs members' approval. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. It's quite a rich picture. Any comments or questions? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Just interesting to know, it's probably something you don't actually need to put in here, but so you've got the highest paid 153,828 and the lowest within the service at 20,258. How many employees are paid at the lowest rate? If it's not something you know now.
Oh, no, I don't have the actual numbers now, but I could go away and find out.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll find out and circulate a note. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Are members happy with the recommendations? Agreed? Thank you. So the next item is to note the content of a report, but can I ask Matthew to introduce the report, please, on the fire station and service training centre, and answer questions on it.
Thank you again, Chair. Well, hopefully you've all seen what our money paid for. I think as an authority and as a service, we were very proud of what we've achieved at St John's, and certainly from a service perspective, we're getting lots and lots of positive feedback, particularly on the training side of things, which I think is testament to lots of people. And I'll just mention Jodie. Jodie Howser is the project manager. I think you may have met her this morning. She's done an absolutely sterling job. Simon Thompson, it was his design. He designed that site pretty much on his own. He got some engagement, but he made sure he did it over a weekend, and interestingly changed all the architect designs. So, very well done to those individuals. And clearly the Fire Authority for pressing ahead with it, because we had some challenges along the way. In terms of the actual project itself, so really positive in terms of our relationship with Artisan. They were exceptional. They were the super contractor. They really managed the process for us exceptionally well, very proactive, and largely kept on budget, particularly at a time when inflation was running absolutely wild. You can appreciate for them to actually manage it within the bounds they did, I believe is very impressive. There were a few things. So members will remember that we had a challenge with our archaeology. I can only just say that word. We had some challenges with our archaeology, and they found a potential Roman settlement, which was a slight delay that we didn't expect. And we also had an issue around the sprinkler system that we had to upgrade. And again, the right thing to do, and obviously members will be aware of both those things because they were brought earlier. The only other really inflationary cost on the actual capital side of it was related to the training building, which was around steel. So they tried their very best to store as much steel as they possibly could on their own site, but they ran out of room. So in the end, over the 18-month period, I think there was about £100,000, or just short of that, additional cost on the training site. But again, when you see the size of that training site, I think we've managed, or they on our behalf have managed that pretty well. So I think it's a positive. I believe it's a real positive project. It will be independently assessed. Our auditors will have a look at it, which is great, because I think it's worth that scrutiny. And we certainly take best practice. I think if I compare this to other sites that we've developed, handing it over to somebody that absolutely knows what they're doing is absolutely worth its weight in gold. So, but thanks to everybody who's contributed to it.
Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to echo Martin's thanks to everybody involved. Jodie, I think she was project manager, and to all the staff, and obviously Artisan for being involved. I must admit, having been around this fire authority for quite a long time, I can remember when the firehouse in the what is now the old fire station was new and was the latest thing in sliced bread. Having been at the opening of that, I have to say it was mind blowing to me this morning to the presentations we had from the staff there, and a fabulous facility. And if it improves our ability to fight, to do what the fire and rescue service is there to do, then every penny of it is worth for us spending. So really, congratulations. Thank you to everybody on behalf of the public.
Thank you. Absolutely. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire is a lot quicker than me on the microphone. Again, to echo and endorse the remarks made by Matthew with regard to Artisan, how many times can anyone remember a contractor dealing with the public sector coming in on budget and on time? It's a very, very rare occurrence. They've been remarkably patient with us. And if you recall, those are about, we did cause them a lot of grief through no fault of our own in the early days, where there was delay upon delay. Then we had the archaeological dig, which was a further problem. So they're quite an amazing contractor. So if you're involved with letting any other contracts in the public sector, please bear them in mind. Thank you.
Councillor Slatter.
I'm sure it's a very sound commercial break that, yes, and we're all in the business of making sure we do get good contractors. Thank you. I was very impressed with the visit. My experience of the fire authority doesn't go anything like as far back, but I was very pleased with the responses to my questions about reuse of water and management of contaminants, and I couldn't catch them out on anything, not that I was trying, because and maybe even the delays have helped, because there's always new stuff coming in terms of new hazards as well as new ways of dealing with them, and it was very, very impressive. I'm sorry we didn't have time to play with things much. I'm also glad that you put your project manager right at the top of the report. Sometimes that person doesn't get proper credit, and it's good to see her name there, and she clearly did know exactly what she was doing and was able to answer my questions, and thank you very much for being so hospitable. Clearly it has got national recognition through outreach, and it may well be that although our own operational staff are the priority, if there are other organizations that will pay to get trained there, that in future may well be a very useful thing, as well as really good for public safety. Thank you.
Matthew.
I think interestingly, we've had a number of fire services already showing interest, and going back to Councillor Reynolds' point around artisan, they're also saying, who did it for you? Because actually, why would we want to reinvent any wheels? You've done all the hard work for us. This is exceptional. So it's actually out there as best practice. I think the only other person I should have, and I think hopefully all of you met Stocker Standen this morning, because again, another just Crofton. So Glenn, the guy who owns Crofton, the training building provider. He said he's never ever worked with anybody like Stocker before, and he said it in a really complimentary way. It wasn't like, he's like, do you realise what he's got out of me? He said it's unbelievable. He's done an amazing job. So I think again, our people, they are pretty impressive.
Thank you, and of course, I must also in the list of people to thank, there's also Councillor Reynolds, who has played such a huge role in getting this going, and thank you very much for all that you've done on this. It has borne fruit. It will be there for a very long time. It will support firefighters going into the future. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who worked on it, but I know that you really championed it, so thank you very much for that. Are there any other comments or points? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to visit this morning, so just wondering if there would be an opportunity to come and have a look at another time. I don't know if everyone else was able to make it.
I see nodding, and I think there will be opportunities in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matthew.
Yes, Councillor Taylor, yes, we can sort that. And anybody else who hasn't been to visit, we can try and piggyback. The other item that Stuart's just mentioned to me is that the actual crews wanted to thank the fire authority. They wanted to pass their thanks on, because actually it has been, like I said, so well received. So they thank you. They thank you, not me. Okay. I think Chris
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just from my perspective as well, it's been a long and tortuous journey to get this facility up and running. Many years. I remember us being within 1 month of signing the contract back in 2015. A few nods around the table, and then we got a better offer from somewhere else. It took us 6 years to get to the end of, cost us of probably over £1 million in reserves, over £100,000 in planning for an alternative site. So I think the tenacity of members as well in supporting us, certainly those members who are here at the time, I thank you for that, because you should be proud yourselves of the facility. And not only do my thanks go to Jodie and Stocker and all those people who've driven this through, but again, I would also like to personally thank Councillor Reynolds, because there were times when it was difficult and we were having to make challenges, and Kevin was right there front and centre, fighting the cause. And I actually don't believe we would have got as far as we did without his support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments to make? I mean, it is a fantastic resource and we will doubtless all want to return and see it grow and develop. Thank you very much. We'll note the report and move on to the next item. Can I ask Shahin, please, to introduce it?
Thank you, Chair. So this report comes forward because we have to review members' allowances at least every 4 years, and we are overdue on that review. In February, I brought a paper and I agreed to come back to you with a costed proposal. We don't have many options. We have to have a panel of 3 independent people to look at this. And when we've done our research, the recommendation to you is to appoint as the chair of that panel, Mr. Mark Palmer from the East of England LGA. He's hugely experienced, not only at district and county level doing this stuff, but also with fire and rescue services, which is a rare find. And the feedback we've had is extremely good. So we think he's the right person with the right caliber, within budget, and he will appoint two members to sit with him. So that's the recommendation, that we move forward with that, and all members will be contacted by Mr. Palmer to get a proper benchmark. This is the first time we've done this as a on our own review for a long time, so I think that'll be well worth doing. So those are my recommendations, that you agree the appointment of a panel of 3 with Mr. Palmer at the centre, and that we just extend the current scheme until that review is concluded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That is the recommendation. Are there any are members happy to support this recommendation, or is there a need for comments and discussion? Happy to support? Any objections? No. Thank you. We will adopt those, approve those recommendations. Thank you very much. We then have minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee. Do members have any questions for the chairs of those committees? No, thank you very much. They are noted. So finally, as I mentioned in my initial announcement, following the appointment of Councillor Dugdale to the Fire Authority by the County Council on Tuesday, I propose to add an urgent item to appoint Councillor Dugdale to those committee places that were vacated by Councillor Atkins. So these are substantive member of Policy and Resources, substitute member for Performance Review Committee, and Fire Authority Appeals Committee. Is everyone happy to support that? Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting today. Thank you very much for attending.